So Apple has unveiled the brand new Apple M1 processor, with which all the new Macs will come with, at least the first three, which are the new MacBook Pro, the new MacBook Air, and then also the new Mac Mini. Like, I was not expecting Apple to introduce a new Mac Mini. I was expecting the third Mac to be a 12-inch MacBook, but we got the Mac Mini instead. So just like we did with the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air, where we covered 25 and 30 things you probably didn't know, in this video I'm going to cover, well, 25 again, things you didn't know and that you need to know before buying a brand new Mac Mini. Don't forget about the iPhone 12 giveaway, full details in the description box down below. And yeah, sit back, relax, get those snacks ready, and enjoy. Okay, so at number 1, interesting enough, the Mac Mini only comes in silver. Unlike the previous model, the Intel model, which came in space gray, and I don't know, I think maybe it could be because this is a lower end Mac Mini, and maybe we'll have a Mac Mini Pro next year. Keep that thought in mind, and you'll see what I mean by the end of this video. Now, because Apple's using their new Apple M1 processor, the chip itself is much smaller. Not only that, but the motherboard, or the logic board, is smaller as well, as a lot of the components are now integrated into the SoC, or into the system on a chip. And because of that, the Mac Mini actually has a lot of space inside. So we have the motherboard, we have the fan, and power supply, and that's pretty much it. So we have loads of space inside. Again, probably hinting at maybe a new Mac Mini next year with a much smaller design. Unfortunately, this new Mac Mini only comes with up to 16 gigabytes of RAM. So you can configure the RAM, you can configure the storage, you can no longer configure the CPU, but with a RAM, 16 is the maximum amount that you can get on this model, as opposed to 64 gigabytes, which is what you could get on the Intel model. Now, I'm hoping that RAM management is improved and it kind of works like on iOS, because otherwise, I don't think 16 gigabytes is gonna be enough for a lot of professional users. Speaking of RAM, something cool on the previous gen Mac Mini was that you could also upgrade the RAM yourself. It wasn't easy because you had to dismantle the whole thing, but I've actually done it and I've upgraded our Mac Mini to 32 gigabytes of RAM. Unfortunately, this is no longer doable with the new Mac Mini, as the RAM, like I said before, is now soldered and built into the SoC. Interesting enough, because we have so much empty space inside, this new Mac Mini is actually lighter than the previous model by 100 grams. So I don't know, if you're the kind of person that travels with the Mac Mini, then it's a bit lighter, so there you go. Now, when it comes to storage, we get up to 2 terabytes of storage, just like on the previous model. However, on the MacBook Pros, the Intel-based MacBook Pros, you could actually get up to 4 terabytes of storage, and even 8 terabytes on the 16-inch, which is something that we do not get on the Mac Mini. So again, this kind of makes me think that this is more of like an entry-level Mac device rather than something aimed at prosumers, as the new MacBook Air and the new MacBook Pro, they both come with up to 2 terabytes of storage as well. Unfortunately, the new Mac Mini only comes with 2 Thunderbolt ports as opposed to 4 like we had before. Now, that's a pretty big downgrade in my opinion, because as a pro user, like we have a Mac Mini, Connor's using one as his daily machine, and those ports are quite used. So especially on a pro machine that you use for daily video editing, you need something like a Thunderbolt NAS, very likely an eGPU, at least 1 monitor, if not even 2. So there's a lot of accessories that you need, and this one only comes with 2 Thunderbolt ports. Now, the Mac Mini also has USB 4, and you would expect that USB 4 is significantly faster than USB 3.1 or 3.2, but it's actually the same thing. Yeah, the only thing that USB 4 introduces is Thunderbolt 3 without the needs for Apple to pay royalties to Intel. Honestly, that's pretty much it. Other than that, you can just call this Thunderbolt 3. In fact, Apple's just calling this Thunderbolt now, USB 4/Thunderbolt on their website. And that's pretty much it. Now, we also get 2 USB Type-A ports on the Mac Mini, just like before, but unfortunately, these 2 ports only support up to 5 gigabit per second speeds. The other 2 Thunderbolt ports, they support up to 40 gigabit per second speeds. So, like I said, it is a bit unfortunate that we don't have more Thunderbolt ports, but I have a theory that the main reason for this is actually the fact that the M1 chip doesn't have enough bandwidth to support more than 2 Thunderbolt connections at the same time, and you'll see what I mean when we get to the displays, the actual number of displays supported on this Mac Mini. Apple says that you can connect up to 3 displays, 4096 by 2304 on the Intel model, and up to just one 6K display and another 3840 by 2160 display on the M1 model. But you will have to use an HDMI port, the one that's already built into the Mac Mini, to connect that secondary display. Which, again, this is why I believe that those Thunderbolt ports are limited in this regard, because with the previous model, you had no limitations. You can just connect basically 3 monitors, whereas now you can only connect 1 monitor to those Thunderbolt ports. But I would say that the biggest downgrade, in my opinion, is the fact that it does not support an eGPU anymore. Now, the thing is, yes, in terms of performance, the integrated graphics are really good now, and I'll cover those in just a second. But the thing is, with an eGPU, you could connect pretty much as many monitors as the GPU itself supported. And with the previous model, since you had 4 Thunderbolt ports, you could connect 4 GPUs. And each of those would support usually 3 displays, 3 4K displays. So in that case, you could have up to 12 4K displays connected to the previous Mac Mini, or even more than that with that extra HDMI port. So 13 4K displays in that case compared to, well, just 2 with this one. And technically, with a single Thunderbolt cable, you could connect up to 2 4K displays, or even a 5K and a 4K. So in that case, you could have even more displays connected to the Intel MacBook Pro. So I think that's honestly the biggest downside of this new Mac Mini. If you can live with 2 displays, you're fine, but if you need anything more than that, then unfortunately this isn't for you. Now, you probably noticed that both the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro, they both feature a significantly improved battery life, with the MacBook Pro offering twice the battery life of the previous generation, the Intel model, with 20 hours of battery life compared to 10. Now, the Mac Mini also comes with the same processor, which means that we also get the same power efficiencies as with the MacBook Air and the Pro, but the Mac Mini doesn't have a battery because it's, always plugged in. It's a desktop computer. So in that case, we get a lower power consumption, 60% lower. So if you care about your energy bill, then this Mac Mini is gonna be quite a bit more power efficient. And unlike the MacBook Air, which does not have any fan at all, the Mac Mini actually has one, and this is the biggest fan on any M1 Mac. But unfortunately, something else that the Mac Mini is missing is 10 gigabit Ethernet. Previously with the Mac Mini, the Intel model, you could actually configure it with a 10 gigabit Ethernet port, but that no longer is the case, because this one only supports a 1 gigabit Ethernet port, which is a major downside, because now if you want to use 10 gig Ethernet, you need to use a Thunderbolt to 10 gig Ethernet adapter, and since you only have 2 Thunderbolt ports, well, you only have 1 left for, like, what, a display or a NAS. You're super limited now. We do get Wi-Fi 6 now for improved speeds and even better congestion management. So if you have a Wi-Fi 6 router and a Wi-Fi 6 device or more devices, then this will be a pretty nice upgrade in that case to your network. But I would say that the biggest upgrades to the Mac Mini are actually when it comes to the performance. For example, we now get an 8-core CPU from the 6-core CPU that we had before. And the way the CPU works is a bit different than the way the previous one worked, where we had six equivalent cores, so to say. Now we have 4 high-performance cores and 4 energy-efficient cores. And depending on what you're doing on the Mac, only a section of those cores will be used. So if you're browsing the web or just exploring Finder, that's when those 4 energy-efficient cores will be used. However, when you're rendering, exporting the video, playing a game, that's when those 4 high-performance cores will be used. So I wouldn't really call this an 8-core processor. I would kind of call it a dual 4-core processor, dual quad-core. But there you go. This is the performance improvement that we're getting, at least when it comes to the number of cores. Now, in terms of the raw CPU performance compared to the previous model, Apple claims up to a 3-time faster CPU performance, but this is compared to the baseline i3 Mac Mini and not to the 6-core i5. And the GPU has also been improved even more so than the CPU. So the GPU is now an 8-core GPU, and it offers 6 times higher performance than the previous model. Again, this is compared to the baseline, which was quite weak, and it only came with the Intel 630 graphics, so pretty weak, but this is 6 times faster, so even browsing, the interface, the UI, the animations, everything will be so smooth on this new Mac Mini when compared to, well, all the previous Macs really. Now, when it comes to some more real-world usage, Apple says that in Final Cut Pro, for example, the new Mac Mini will render the timeline 6.6 times faster than the previous baseline model. That's pretty nuts. So if you had a project that took 6 minutes to render, this will take less than a minute to render, which is absolutely insane. Keep in mind, this is just with integrated graphics, so I'm quite curious to see what will happen next year when Apple releases an iMac with an actual dedicated GPU. We've had a few leaks on that, so really curious to see that. Now, if you want to get a brand new Mac with the M1 processor and you really want to test out that performance and you want the best performance that you can get, well, that's actually the brand new Mac Mini. Because you see, the Mac Mini has the best cooling out of all the Macs with the M1 processor. The MacBook Air doesn't have a fan at all. The MacBook Pro has a single tiny fan, but the Mac Mini has a single, well, bigger fan. Not only that, but this is also a desktop essentially, so it's always plugged in. So I'm also expecting the clock speeds to be a bit higher on the Mac Mini when compared to even the MacBook Pro. Speaking of performance, when compared to Windows PCs, at this price point, Apple claims that the Mac Mini is a 1/10 of the size and yet 5 times faster. I would have loved to see, exact specs as to, what system Apple compared the Mac Mini to. Like, that'll be great because, they could have compared it to like an older model of a Windows PC. So I don't know, we just know that it's pretty fast. We'll be getting it next week, so definitely subscribe, hit the bell icon because we'll be doing benchmarks and everything. So definitely stay tuned for that. But interesting enough, the Intel model of the Mac Mini is still here, and it starts from $1,100, so it's quite a bit more expensive. So do you get anything extra? Well, let's see, if we configure the M1 Mac Mini to the same storage as the Intel one has a 6-core CPU. The M1 has an 8-core CPU, kinda. I told you about those 4 low performance and 4 high performance cores. Now, the GPU in the M1 is 6 times faster. The CPU in the M1 is 3 times faster than compared to the base i3 2018 Mac Mini, and about 1.5 times faster than this 6-core Mac Mini. However, the Intel Mac Mini comes in space gray, which I would say looks quite a bit nicer. And the Intel Mac Mini also has 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports, so if you want to connect it to a lot of monitors, then you can do that with the Intel model as opposed to the M1 model. And by default, the Intel model supports 3 displays, and the M1 model supports 1 display through Thunderbolt ports, and then an extra one through that HDMI port. Now, I would say that probably the best use case scenario for this new Mac Mini, especially at this price point, is for you to use it as a home server or even as an office server. You can connect it to external hard drives or even stuff like NAS accessories or DASs, and then connect remotely to the Mac Mini and basically control everything from it. This is something that we actually had set up when we got the previous gen Mac Mini, and with this one, since it's even better cooled, like the processor runs cooler, it's gonna last you longer. So I would say this is a really good option for a home server setup, or even an office server setup. And finally, the last thing that you should definitely be aware of is don't get fooled by the low price of the Mac Mini. So yes, it does cost $700, which is the cheapest for any M1 Mac. However, you also need to add a keyboard, a trackpad, and a monitor. And if you add an Apple keyboard, an Apple trackpad, that's gonna bring the cost up to $997, which is actually $2 less than the MacBook Air. And you still do not have a monitor. So if you had a monitor, let's say a $200 monitor, that's gonna bring the cost up to $1,200. And at that point, you can just buy a MacBook Pro. Yes, the performance won't be as good, but you have another display, the MacBook display. You also have an integrated battery. You can take it with you. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you would pick a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro over the Mac Mini. But anyways, like I said, lots of content coming next week with all of these new Macs. Check out the previous videos that we did on the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro. And other than that, this has been pretty much it. Don't forget about the iPhone 12 giveaway. Full details in the description box down below. I'm Daniel, this has been ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.